My name is Daniel Harper, and as I stood in the doorway of my father's hidden mountain cabin, I realized something strange. For years, I'd imagined this moment. I'd imagined finding answers, finding proof, finding a reason that could explain why my father had lived two separate lives. But as the cold mountain air drifted through the open doorway, I wasn't sure I wanted the truth anymore. Because sometimes, the mystery is easier to live with than the answer. Samuel stepped beside me, his lantern casting long shadows across the cabin floor. "Ready?" he asked quietly. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Together, we stepped inside. The cabin was smaller than I'd expected. One room, a stone fireplace, a narrow bed against the far wall, a wooden table near the window. Everything sat exactly where it had been left years ago, as if our father had planned to return, as if he had simply stepped outside for a moment. Dust covered every surface. A thick layer of silence hung in the air. Samuel moved toward the fireplace while I slowly walked around the room. There were books stacked neatly on a shelf, fishing gear hanging beside the door, a coffee mug resting on the table. My father had always preferred black coffee. Even now, decades later, I could almost picture him sitting there, alone, watching the snowfall outside, living with secrets he never shared. "What is this place?" I whispered. Samuel ran his fingers across the back of an old chair. I think this was the only place where he didn't have to choose. His words settled heavily in my chest, because I knew exactly what he meant. Here, in this hidden cabin, our father wasn't a husband to one family or another. He wasn't carrying promises or guilt. He was simply himself. For the first time in my life, I felt sorry for him. Not because of the choices he made, but because of the burden he carried. I walked toward the small bookshelf. Several journals sat neatly in a row. My pulse quickened. I pulled one free and opened it. The pages were blank. Every journal. Blank. Samuel frowned. Why would he keep empty journals? I looked closer. The pages had been cut, carefully removed. Someone had taken them, or hidden them. A sudden gust of wind rattled the cabin windows. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Samuel pointed toward the corner near the bed. "Daniel." I followed his gaze. Half hidden beneath an old wool blanket sat a wooden chest reinforced with iron bands. A heavy brass lock secured the front. My heart began pounding. We'd found it. Whatever our father had hidden was inside. We knelt beside the chest. Samuel brushed away years of dust. "Do you have a key?" I shook my head. He reached into his coat pocket. Slowly, he pulled out a small iron key tied to a faded leather cord. My mother gave me this before she died. I stared at the key. She knew. Samuel nodded. I think she always hoped we'd find each other. For a moment, we simply looked at the chest. Two brothers connected by a secret neither of us had chosen. Then Samuel handed me the key. "You should do it." My hand trembled as I inserted the key into the lock. It resisted at first. Then, with a loud click, it opened. We lifted the lid together. Inside were bundles of letters tied with twine, old photographs, a leather-bound journal, and one sealed envelope resting on top. Across the front, written in my father's familiar handwriting, were 5 words. "For Daniel and Samuel." I stopped breathing. He knew. Years before his death, he'd known this day would come. He'd known we'd find each other. He'd known we'd come here. Samuel's voice shook. He left it for us. I carefully picked up the envelope. The paper felt fragile beneath my fingers. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Because once we opened that letter, there would be no going back. The truth we'd spent our lives searching for would finally be ours, whether we were ready or not. I broke the seal. Inside was a single folded letter. I unfolded it slowly, and began to read. "My sons, if you are reading this, then life has unfolded exactly as I feared it would. First, I need you to know something important. I never stopped loving either of you. Not for a single day." Samuel looked away, wiping his eyes. I continued reading. "I know my choices caused pain. I know I failed both of you in ways I can never repair. There is no excuse for what I did. Only an explanation. The fireless cabin felt colder somehow. Outside, snow drifted quietly past the windows. Inside, my entire life was changing again. When I was a young man, I loved Eleanor Whitaker. We planned to marry. We planned a future together. Then tragedy struck your grandmother, Daniel. Your grandfather died suddenly, leaving behind debts that threatened to take everything. Your mother and her family faced losing the farm. I made a promise to help them. I believed it would be temporary. I believed I could save everyone. My throat tightened. I glanced at Samuel. He sat motionless beside me, listening, hurting, understanding. But life is rarely that simple. Promises become responsibilities. Responsibilities become chains. And before I understood what I had done, I had broken one heart trying to save another. I closed my eyes. For years, I'd seen my father as either a good man or a dishonest one. But now I saw something else. A flawed man. A man trapped by impossible choices. A man who tried to do right and failed. The cabin became my punishment. The only place where I could remember who I used to be. I spent 3 months here every year because it was the only place where I could carry my grief without hurting anyone else. I know that sounds selfish. Perhaps it was. The letter continued. Daniel, you gave me more joy than you will ever know. Samuel, every day I spent away from you remains my greatest regret. You deserved better from me. Both of you did. A heavy silence settled over the cabin. For the first time since Samuel arrived at my farmhouse, neither of us felt anger. Only sadness. And perhaps something else. Compassion. Near the bottom of the page, another paragraph caught my attention. There is one final truth you deserve to know. Beneath the loose floorboard under the bed, you will find something I have protected for many years. It belongs to both of you now. Samuel and I exchanged a look. Questions filled his eyes. The same questions racing through my mind. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Then we both turned toward the bed. The floorboards creaked beneath our boots as we crossed the room. I knelt beside the old wooden frame and ran my hand along the floor. There. One board sat slightly higher than the others. I slid my fingers beneath the edge and lifted. Hidden beneath the floor was a small metal box wrapped in oilcloth. Samuel stared at it. What do you think is inside? I looked down at the box. Then back at my brother. After everything we'd discovered, I wasn't sure I wanted to guess. Because every answer seemed to lead to another secret. And somehow, I knew this one would change everything.